Nowhere on Earth have those warmer temperatures been more evident than the Arctic. Arctic ice, which in recent years remained rock hard year-round, is melting and melting at an alarming rate. CCTV's Sean Callebs spent several months reporting from the Arctic, and he joins us to explain the risks. You saw it firsthand, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. NASA is talking about it to a great deal, and the news is simply sobering, especially on the heels of the important summit in Paris last year, where nations came together in an effort to keep global temperatures from inching up just 2 degrees centigrade since the start of the Industrial Revolution. NASA researchers detailed the effects of Arctic warming, which is twice as fast as the rest of the world.
The sea ice cover that's decreasing, that has big implications for climate because the sea ice is like a cap on the Arctic Ocean, and it's a reflective cap. It's white. It reflects most of the sun's energy during the summertime. And so that helps keep the Arctic cooler and essentially acts as a cooling mechanism, kind of like a refrigerator for the global climate. But as we're decreasing sea ice over the years during the summertime, now the ocean is absorbing that energy. It's heating up the ocean and it's heating up the atmosphere. So it's kind of like we're opening the refrigerator door as we lose the Arctic sea ice.
One thing that really jumped out last month when NASA talked about the extremely warm conditions, the fact that already globally, we've jumped about 1.5 degrees Celsius since the dawn of the industrial age. And thinking back to the Paris climate talks, that really China and the United States had a very lead in that, saying we have to find a way to pump the brakes on this. What are the concerns? Is it realistic at all to think that over the next quarter of a century, we're going to be able to keep temperatures down?
As temperatures are continuing to rise, I think it's going to be a challenge, and a challenge for policymakers and for economics and so forth to try and do this. What we're doing at NASA is to really provide the best data that we can, as well as modeling that we can, to inform decision makers, inform policymakers, to make informed decisions on what needs to be done, what policies need to be implemented. So at NASA, for the Arctic, for example, we have Operation Icebridge that we've been flying for several years. We were just up there last month taking measurements over the Arctic sea ice. We're flying again. Actually, next week we're heading up there to fly over Greenland. We're also preparing ISAT-2, which is a new satellite mission that's going to be launched in 2018. And these will really give us much better information, more detailed information on the changes that are occurring and how we can expect these to change in the future and what the impacts are going to be on the global climate so that we can inform the policy decisions.
You know, in 2012, there was melting over 97% of the Greenland ice sheet, and all that fresh water pouring to the ocean area. Are there concerns that we are adversely affecting things such as airflow, species, water streams, things of that nature?
Yeah, certainly. We're definitely affecting things with the loss of the Arctic sea ice and Greenland. For sea ice, it grows and melts within the ocean, but because of this reflective action and reflecting the sun's energy and the refrigerator effect, as we change the sea ice, that has effects outside of the Arctic. What happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic. And so we're already seeing some indications of changes in like the jet stream that steers weather patterns. It's becoming more loopy and kind of has more north to south loops instead of just a straight east to west or west to east flow. And that has an effect of slowing down weather systems, causing more extremes. And then with Greenland, the primary effect with the big losses of mass in Greenland, the surface melt and calving icebergs, that's land ice that's going into the ocean. That raises sea levels. And so we're seeing an acceleration in the sea level rise, partly due to the Greenland melt.
And as the Greenland ice sheet melts, more and more fresh water pours into the ocean, and it means the sea level will rise. Now, this is a huge concern because some 80% of the people in the world live within 100 kilometers of the ocean. And Mike, roughly 1 in 10 live in an area that is considered low level. So people in Shanghai, people in Miami, in the United States, they're all faced with a somewhat uncertain future.
He mentioned Greenland. We know that you've traveled there as well. What's at stake there?
Well, it's interesting because he talked about if you have sea ice and it melts, it's like having a glass of water with ice in it. And if that water melts, the level doesn't go up. However, if you take ice that's on land and pour it into the ocean, the sea level rises. So you're seeing dramatic melting, not only in Greenland, but also in Antarctic and the South Pole. And as that happens, it really threatens to dramatically increase sea levels. This is going to be a long-term effect, but they have seen historical melting in the last 4 or 5 years.
We're talking a lot about ice. We're not talking as much about people, but you brought that element to the story as well. The Native Americans or Native Alaskans there, the Native people, it's impacting them and their livelihoods.
Yeah, without question. We saw that, and that's another thing, because one thing NASA talks about is those people are kind of the canary in the coal mine, if you will. They are people that first noticed the ice was becoming thinner and thinner and began telling scientists. And 10, 15 years ago, scientists were saying, oh, you're mistaken, you're mistaken. Well, now they realize just how accurate they were. And they break the ice down into 3 levels. There's seasonal ice, which forms and melts every year. Second-year ice, which lasts 2 years. If it lasts longer than 2 years, it's called multi-year ice. That is the rock-hard ice that has been up in the Arctic forever. It is that multi-year ice that is melting as fast as anything, and that is going to have a huge impact globally.
And this reflection concept, I haven't really ever thought of that. And he talked about best data. It's not just best data. It's when you look at the images and what's out there, it's chilling data. I mean, this is scary stuff, isn't it?
It is chilling stuff. And I asked him if you're hitting the alarm button right now. He's a scientist. He's not a policymaker, so he avoided that kind of term. There you see a weather balloon that's going up in Barrow, Alaska. Now what happens, it's called aerosols, these black flecks of soot that drop not only on the Arctic ice, but also in ice fields that are in northern Alaska, in Russia, in other areas that are in the Arctic. Now, as this soot begins to touch down on this white ice and white snow, again, the sun it absorbs the sun's energy, doesn't reflect it. The good news here, scientists say that yes, there is a chance that this is perhaps the easiest thing to take care of. If we can get rid of these pollutants, if we can get rid of these aerosols, then it's going to make a somewhat significant improvement, if you will, somewhat quickly in these areas where this soot is building up. They are researching it. They're trying to find ways to combat it, but admitting there is a problem is one of the first steps.
Sean, thanks so much. Lots to digest there.